Good evening, Tanse, and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. A camp set up to protest a variety of issues, including COVID-19 restrictions on the north lawn of the Manitoba Legislative Building in Winnipeg, is no more. Winnipeg police and conservation officers took down 2 teepees and stopped the construction of a third. 12 people have been arrested so far, leading to several charges. Police say that weapons were found at the site, but camp members say they were axes to chop wood. The North Side camp was notably controversial for protesting against COVID-19 restrictions and conflict in the Middle East, among other issues. An East Side camp was left intact as it was set up in response to the discovery of suspected unmarked graves in Kamloops. They hope to stay and continue to burn a sacred fire until all residential school sites are searched. But police say there is no enforcement action planned, but that may change.
There's no enforcement action plan, but like I said, at any moment we could be forced into taking action to preserve public safety. So we are trying to let a peaceful resolution evolve out of this.
And still in Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Police Major Crimes Unit is investigating the death of an Indigenous woman who died earlier this summer after suffering severe burns to her body. 41-year-old Melissa Cook died in hospital on August 20th. The Chief Medical Examiner's Office ruled her death a homicide due to her injuries. She was a member of the Sapataouiak Cree Nation in northwestern Manitoba and had been living in Winnipeg since April. Detectives believe Cook was homeless while in Winnipeg and may have lived in encampments. She is the 7th Indigenous woman known to be murdered in Winnipeg this year. And we want to hear what you think about some of the stories you've seen so far tonight. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Homelessness and addictions are growing issues throughout the country. In Alberta, cities and smaller communities are bracing for even greater housing shortages and overdoses. This past weekend, the Alberta government announced major funding to help combat homelessness and addictions in the province. APTN's Chris Stewart has the details.
$187 million over 2 years was announced on Saturday by outgoing Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. $63 million will be spent to fight homelessness in areas across Alberta that need it most, says Kenney.
To expand the number of shelter spaces, especially for the winter months, in priority communities like Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, Lethbridge, and rural communities where there's an urgent and unmet need.
The Premier admits not enough has been done to help those who have no place to live or addicted.
First responsibility of government is to ensure public safety. And let's be honest, governments have not risen to that challenge adequately here in Edmonton, Chinatown.
$124 million over 2 years will help expand addiction recovery in Edmonton and Calgary, where $65 million will be spent. Provincially run shelters will be run 24/7.
The status quo was not helping people. In many cases, it was enabling people who were struggling in the depths of the illness of addiction to continue to use and abuse toxic, deadly poisons like fentanyl.
Edmonton Police Service Chief Dale McPhee applauds the addition of recovery units in all provincial jails.
I think it's yet to be determined what that looks like and where that is. But the fact that we're putting safety and wellness in the whole perspective and putting it in a health domain is going to be a game changer.
For those to kick in.
Hope Mission Manager of Homeless Programs says he is thankful for the additional supports.
I think having that additional support, both on an emergency basis to have additional shelter spaces, available and funding for that, but then also to be focusing on a continuum of care, I think was necessary, and I'm glad there was action taken.
He told APTN that the Hope Shelter was at 100% capacity during the summer and was worried about the upcoming winter.
You have to take people in a situation in the winter where you might not have the staffing resources that you need, or to operate safely and to support people as, with whatever they are needing at that time. So, without the funding, I think we would have been in a tough spot for sure.
The Alberta government says that as of January, over 6,400 Albertans are experiencing homelessness. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
All right, we need to step aside for a short break, but stay with us. More stories still ahead. Welcome back. This week is Mental Illness Awareness Week, and the federal New Democrats took the Trudeau government to task on Wednesday for what they call underfunding mental wellness initiatives. New Democrats are calling on the Liberals to make good on a 2021 campaign commitment to provide $4.5 billion over 5 years for mental health. The Liberals pledged $228 million over 5 years for Indigenous mental wellness in this year's budget. At a Wednesday press conference, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said Indigenous people are disproportionately impacted by mental health challenges.
There's been many communities that have faced serious crises around suicide. It's something that our Member of Parliament from Nunavut has raised as a serious problem in Nunavut, but it's again a problem across the country in Indigenous communities because of a lack of investments in healthcare, a historic inequality that continues to be felt, and so we need to see real investments.
Although families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls have made their way home from rallies across the country, their pleas for action continue to echo in the halls of Parliament. Here's some of that exchange during question period today.
Yesterday, Indigenous families, communities across Turtle Island grieved and demanded answers for their missing loved ones. Families have been calling for justice and urgent action from this government. Instead of doing everything they can to ensure no more lives are lost, the Liberals have been doing the bare minimum. They have spent only a fraction of the funding they promised for violence prevention initiatives and have barely implemented the calls for justice from the MMIW 2S report. The Liberals have been in power now 7 years. When will they finally start delivering the justice Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks deserve?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our hearts remain with survivors and families of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQI+ people. Addressing this ongoing violence requires living up to our goals as a country and living up to all the calls for justice. We're taking a whole-of-government approach supported by an over $2 billion investment in concrete measures to keep people safe and close to $2 billion investment to support Indigenous housing needs. We understand that there is always more to do, and we will continue to work urgently on it alongside Indigenous peoples.
A documentary covering a decades-long Indigenous land rights battle will be making its BC premiere at the Vancouver International Film Festival this week. Klabona Keepers follows the matriarch-led fight to protect headwaters in Tahltan territory in northern BC. APTN's Lee Wilson has more.
Klabona Keepers is the name of the matriarch group that fought to protect the Klabona headwaters against mining and natural gas companies starting in 2004. The headwaters, located in Tahltan territory, are where 4 salmon-bearing rivers form, including the Skeena and the Nass rivers. Rhoda Kwok is a spokesperson for the group and a producer of the documentary. She says those rivers are their livelihood.
Also really fighting for our livelihood. Japan is our livelihood. That's where we get our winter's meat. That's where we get our medicinal plants. That's where we take our youth to teach them our ways.
Directed by Tomo Campos and Jasper Snow Rosen, who used 15 years of footage which showed the group's standoffs with police and industry. Kwok's son, Robert Jocasta, says he grew up in the blockades. He hopes their group's successful fight to protect their headwaters against natural resource extraction inspires those who watch their story.
Because it's Crown land, so they force their way in. They force their way in and take our minerals out of our land without even having consent. This is we're one of the first times a top 3 company in the world was sent on their way, and they weren't able to exploit land from Indigenous people. And I just want to get that across, just people to understand just how incredible that is. Just what a feat we were able to accomplish over those many years.
All proceeds from the film will go to youth programming in Klabana Headwaters. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
I looked at him and I said,
all right, it's time for one final break, but still ahead, we'll have highlights of the season premiere of In Focus today, talking with Indigenous chefs. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Marlene King captured the clear blue sky and lush green mountains in this photo taken from the harbor in Bella Coola, British Columbia. That's a great photo there, Marlene. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting over in the east, 16 and some showers in Charlottetown and 17 in Halifax. 16 in clear and Happy Valley Goose Bay and 16 in Cartwright. 20 degrees in Quebec City and 20 in Val-d'Or. 22 in Toronto and 17 in North Bay. 5 degrees in Timmins and 6 degrees in Big Trout Lake. 6 degrees in Churchill and 4 in Norway House. 5 degrees in Barons River and 16 in Winnipeg. 16 and clear in Swift Current and 12 in North Battleford. 12 degrees in Buffalo Narrows and 11 in Uranium City. Moving west, 13 and clear in Fort Chippewa and 16 in Peace River. 20 in Edmonton and 17 in Calgary. 24 in Campbell River and 22 in Bella Coola. 17 in Sandspit and 17 in Fort Nelson. 15 in Whitehorse and 6 in Old Crow. 13 in Norman Wells and 18 in Fort Liard. 9 in Fort McPherson and 8 in Colville Lake. 2 degrees in Cambridge Bay and 4 in Whale Cove. -6 in Resolute and -3 in Iqaluit. The Métis sash is a cultural symbol well known in Western Canada, but did you know it first appeared in Eastern Canada in the late 1700s? Shushan Bécon caught up with a Wendat artist in Quebec City trying to reclaim the tradition of hand-weaving the ceinture fléchée. Here's the story translated and voiced by Lindsay Richardson.
La ceinture fléchée, more commonly known in English as the Métis sash. As the name suggests, it's an emblem of Métis culture in Western Canada. But the sash's possible Eastern origins are being explored as part of a collaborative art exhibit out of Quebec City.
Moi, je me suis dit, ben, c'est votre art à vous, c'est votre tradition, là. Je vais vous redonner, c'est très ironique, hein? Une Wendat qui redonne la tradition.
The exhibit at Métis, a gallery in Quebec City, is called Yandawa, meaning river in the Wendat language. The goal, unite 7 artists from Quebec and the Huron-Wendat community of Wendake to collaborate on a series of works.
1, 2, 3. Je suis rendue à 3. Je fais mon crochet, je serre, je finis mes bleus.
For the occasion, André Lévesque-Sioui is putting in her handiwork on this massive 16-foot piece, a contemporary rendering of a ceinture fléchée.
Le chevron universel, ça nous vient des Français, mais ça existait dans le monde un peu partout. Comme je te disais, je pense que les plus vieux ouvrages qu'on a retrouvés, c'était au Japon.
Weaving may be a global practice, but according to Sioui, towards the end of the 18th century, French Canadians in the Lanaudière region created the flèche weave. But the influence in the design itself came from First Nations. So did the addition of pearls or glass beads, each hand-woven sash taking hours to fabricate.
Une ceinture fléchée qui fait, parce qu'il faut que ça fasse 2 fois un tour d'un homme, et dépendamment de l'homme, si assez badonnant, ça fait 2 bons tours de taille. Et on noue la ceinture dans les franges et non dans l'ouvrage. Jamais ici, on va aller dans les franges. Puis, donc, ça peut prendre 400 heures.
Siwi credits the use of more modern tools with the widespread production and eventual circulation of the sash.
Ils ont fait tisser les ceintures sur des métiers à tisser. Et c'est cette ceinture-là, par la suite, qui a beaucoup voyagé, celle qui était faite au métier à tisser et non plus à la main, et que les voyageurs, souvent métissés, mais les Canadiens français, en fait, voyageurs, qui partaient vers l'Ouest, et les Métis de l'Ouest ont adopté aussi cette ceinture-là.
The exhibit will be on until mid-October, a reflection of the common heritages of the past beyond the 2 banks of the Yandawa. A story by Shashan Bacon, APTN National News, Quebec City.
A documentary about one man's residential school experience premiered in Winnipeg recently. Bimabatuin, Where I Ran, shares the story of Charlie Bittern's run for his life. Sav Jones met with him and director Erica Daniels to learn more.
An 80-kilometer run during a blizzard sounds impossible, but young Charlie Bittern had no other choice.
It's either do or die. That's what it was in residential school. Either do or die.
Charlie Bittern is a survivor of Birtle Residential School in Manitoba, and his experience there is now preserved in film.
I feel relieved by sharing my story because now people will know, and even my family never knew what happened to me till tonight, first time they're going to see.
Filmmaker Erica Daniels has brought Bittern's story of perseverance to the masses.
Bimabatuin, Where I Ran is a short doc based on Charlie Bittern's experience of when he was in Birtle Residential School and he was forced to run 80 kilometers throughout the night of one of Manitoba's brutal blizzards in 1967. And so this story kind of shares that particular experience and how that sort of affected him in his life.
The short film premiered at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. Musicians opened for the film to a full house.
There's no life, your luck has all run cold.
Bittern says sharing his story was a long time in the making.
My late dad used to tell me, he says, when you're young, when you get hurt, he says, and for years you don't feel a hurt, but as you grow older, he says, the wound, the hurt will come back. And that's what happened to me as a young teenager. And right now as I'm walking here going west, my memory is just flashing back. And as I walk here, I'm starting to feel light. Like I'm not one bit tired. I feel like running.
As these difficult conversations gain public acknowledgement, Daniels believes that the children who never made it home are to thank.
What happened in June of 2021, where they discovered, the children, it really shook people, and it finally gave us that I feel like those children are giving us that opportunity to finally be heard. There's such a purpose to that and how that came about, and it's really important that we're able to share these stories and for people to hear and listen. It's that time now that we move forward.
The film also serves as a tool for education.
I can't wait for people to see it because it will touch many lives across Canada, and I really hope that this will be an opportunity for Canadians to reflect and to sort of do their part in learning these stories and listening to these stories and sharing them, because that's the way that we have to move forward is hearing that truth in order for us to heal and to move on to reconciliation.
Bittern has a message to send for those who may relate to his experience or are looking to amplify the voices of survivors.
A lot of survivors have passed on and buried with what they experienced they never shared to nobody. And I said, us survivors that are alive should share the stories they went through. And a lot of those stories are are very hard to talk about, but it's time they come and share like what I did.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
On today's season opener of In Focus, we speak with 3 Indigenous chefs who are each showcasing their talents on different cooking shows. We have the star of Moose Meat and Marmalade seen here on APTN, another Indigenous chef who's currently a contestant on Top Chef Canada, and spoiler alert, the well-known chef who won a reality TV show in March of this year. Check it out.
Does Dan ever get fed up with the adventures of some of the things that you come up with for him to eat? I mean, he's a buttoned up, guy, right? Does he ever just look and go, I'm not doing that, come on?
Well, surprisingly, oh yeah, there was one time he would not eat seal intestines, but, I don't know. He's got a thing about seal intestines. He ate moose eyeball and he ate moose intestines, but he wouldn't eat seal intestines.
Congratulations goes to Piet.
What was it like competing on Next Level Chef? And how was it working with Gordon Ramsay? Like, did he spaz on you at any point in time?
So it's so funny. Being on the show was an incredible experience. It was also absolutely terrifying.
I bet.
Just because it was just like such high intensity.
This Friday, APTN Investigates returns with its 14th season. Charlotte Moore-Jacobs and Cullen Crozier take a look at the historic papal visit this summer and speak with survivors about a path forward. Here's a preview.
It's a story that echoes the residential school experience in Canada for generations of former students. Colonization, assimilation, genocide.
My name is Josephine Small. I'm from the Ermineskin Reserve in Muscogee. My Cree name is Gawits Bimhaumwitesquil, which means flying with the birds woman. A lot of people cannot tell their story without getting traumatized. This Pope visit is re-traumatizing to a lot of people, and I really didn't think it would affect me this bad, but it did.
Josephine Small is a day scholar and intergenerational survivor. Her parents also attended the Ermineskin Residential School.
The intergenerational trauma that I experienced, I didn't realize I put it on my kids until I had grandkids. They're the ones that taught me to start healing, to try and do better. Like, my grandkids are my second chance to be a good parent, to be a good person.
You can watch the full episode Friday right after the news. All right, well, that's going to do it for this Wednesday edition of APTN National News. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us. Miigwech, and have a great night.